An institutionalised regime of prescribing and administering opioids without medical justification is what's been described at. The lives of 456 people have had their lives shortened, potentially 200 more with missed records. It's just shocking to see this morning.
Shocking and chilling. And it's a scandal. It's taken 30 years since first complaints were made to have this inquiry, which has cost £13 million. The relatives, unfortunately, will never have closure on this. They'll always be angry, and it's too late to do anything about it. The main GP on which the focus of attention is being put has retired long ago, and probably most of her colleagues have as well, who condoned and colluded with her. Clearly, I mean, they were prescribing strong opioids. And
what was it being used for that then led to the
You might use it
being lost?
For the terminal stages of cancer with metastasis in bone, so a lot of intractable pain. And you'd use it in that situation where it was needed for the comfort of the patient. You wouldn't use it for someone having rehabilitation for a shoulder injury or recovering from a stroke. You want them to be alert as possible.
How does this happen then, Hilary? How on earth, over such a long period of time, can this prescription of these opioids be happening so prevalently?
First of all, you have to wonder why a GP, a clinical assistant in a hospital like that, was given such freedom. Where were the consultants in charge of those individual patients? They clearly weren't presiding over the prescribing. She was. Why were the doctors, the nurses, not listened to when they said we think it's overdosing with these powerful medicines? And what really upsets me is the lack of communication between relatives and medical staff. Communication is still a massive problem in the NHS. Patients trying to get answers to things. And if only doctors could communicate better with relatives, we would have far less complaints.
Kevin,
because often what is prescribed is appropriate. It's just that we don't explain what we're doing enough.
No, or relatives are frightened to speak out, become intimidated. Looks like nurses had, on occasion, spoken out.
And we're ignored. We're told to shut up, dismissed as troublemakers. This scandal is just absolutely incredible. You go to hospital to get better. You were checking into what was a Dignitas clinic and you didn't know it. And your life is being ended. I understand the anger of all those families. They can't bring back their loved ones, but they're quite right to want justice. And we can try and stop this happening again. Any private company or any other institution would be finished by a scandal like this. We need the NHS. We love the NHS. It performs miracles daily, saving lives. But this is a stain on the NHS.
Andrew, we saw that some of the relatives are putting a crowdfunding page together to try and raise the funds to get a criminal barrister engaged. Obviously, that's something that's going to garner all sorts of interest, of course. But do you see criminal charges as the only way forward here?
Absolutely right, because this was criminal negligence or criminal misconduct. This particular GP was investigated 3 times. It's the biggest scandal probably in the NHS's history.
Here's an example of something that broke my heart when I was reading it. The report recounts the testimony of Pauline Spilker, a nurse who gave evidence to the police back in 2001. Right. She said that there was one man of about 80. He had stomach cancer, but he was lively, able to look after himself. One day, she said, I left work after my shift. He was his normal self. Upon returning to work the following day, I was shocked to find him on a syringe driver with this opioid going into him and unconscious. He was unconscious until he died. She felt unable to feel, unable to speak to his family, and was convinced the death had been unnecessary. So that was your father.
Awful.
Lively, able to look after himself, recovering. The next day he's unconscious, and then he dies.
It's beyond imagination, and you'd be torturing yourself. I've always hated ambulance chasers, people who look at the NHS as a way of just getting money.
I'm sure Dr. Hillary does as well,
mistakes will always be made. We try and minimise them. I'm not making them light. But this is something that's gone on institutionally for so long.
In 2010, there was a statement. The General Medical Council investigation found Dr. Barton guilty of serious professional misconduct. Following that ruling, Hillary, she issued this statement saying, throughout my career, I have tried to do my very best for all my patients.
Well, she certainly wasn't following the guidelines that were established at the time in correct prescribing of those kinds of drugs. She was over-prescribing, there's no doubt about that, and that's why she was brought to book by the GMC, but not obviously to a sufficient level to prevent her carrying on in the prescribing that she was engaged in. I think
Do you think
since
criminal
then,
charges are appropriate here, Hills?
it's really difficult. You know, as we've heard, there were 3 police investigations, there were 2 medical reviews, and there have been 11 inquiries during this time, and none of them found her to be criminally guilty of murder. She wasn't struck off, so it's a grey area. Since then, the regulations and the guidelines are very much stricter. They're incredibly strict now. You couldn't possibly practice like this anymore, and that hopefully will give succour to many people going to hospital today. However, looking back at those times, there was certainly laziness on behalf of many of the doctors that worked with her, not checking what she was doing, and there was an atmosphere of let her just get on with it. And that is why the relatives will be so bitter and angry, and I don't blame them.